Hey folks, Rick Sullivan here. Welcome back to NASDUCK, the only place where we admit that the emperor has no clothes and then we short the textile industry. For any new listeners, let me be clear about what we do here. For 20 years, I worked on Wall Street. I was in the engine room of that giant smoke-belching machine. And what I learned is that the financial news network, the guys in the $1,000 suits shouting numbers at you, they're not analysts. They're storytellers. They weave these beautiful, intricate fairy tales about market forces and earnings reports and visionary CEOs. And it's all nonsense. It's a puppet show designed to keep you looking at the stage while the real action, the real transfer of wealth and power, happens backstage. Well, I'm the guy who got tired of pulling the strings and decided to tell the audience how the tricks are done. So pour yourself something strong. You're going to need it. Because today we're talking about a deal that so perfectly exposes the lie at the heart of the system. It's almost poetic. The story starts, as so many of these stories do, with a loud patriotic declaration. The US government, a little while back, decided that high-end AI chips from companies like Nvidia and AMD were a dire national security threat if they fell into Chinese hands. Can't let them have the good stuff, it would upset the balance of power. It was a matter of principle, a line in the sand. Fair enough, sounds responsible, even noble. You hear that and you think, okay, our government is looking out for us. That was the story, the fairy tale. Then, in August of 2025, we got the reality. The Trump administration did a complete 180. They announced that Nvidia and AMD could resume selling their restricted, albeit slightly downgraded, AI chips to China. So, what happened? Did the chips suddenly become less powerful? Did China promise to only use them for peaceful, non-threatening things like kitten videos? No, of course not. The national security threat, it turns out, has a price tag. And that price is 15%. You heard me. The deal is this. Nvidia and AMD can sell these supposedly dangerous chips, but they have to hand over 15% of all the revenue they make from those sales directly to the US Treasury. The reporting is just beautiful in its cynicism. Apparently, the initial demand from the White House was 20%, but Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, managed to haggle them down. They negotiated a national security policy like it was a fee for a new patio. Let this sink in. I want you to truly process the monumental, soul-crushing hypocrisy of it. A piece of technology is either a threat to the nation's future or it isn't. Its strategic danger doesn't magically decrease because the US government gets a VIG. So it's basically a mob shakedown with a flag pinned to its lapel. It's the state acting like a street gang telling a shop owner, "Nice little business you got here, be a shame if something happened to it. For a small fee, we can make sure it stays open." They're calling it revenue sharing. I call it what it is, a tribute. Protection money. An investor in India nailed it perfectly. He called it patriotism as a service. You want to access a foreign market? You pay the patriotism tax. And the most beautiful, most insidious part of it all? It was likely done without any congressional approval. The US Constitution has this quaint little thing called the Export Clause, which explicitly forbids the government from taxing exports. It was put there by the founders precisely to stop a powerful executive from using trade as a personal piggy bank or a weapon against his political enemies. But who reads the Constitution anymore when you can just make a deal? So for you, the investor, the person trying to build a legacy, this is signal number one that the rules have fundamentally changed. The bedrock of American capitalism was supposed to be a predictable legal framework. That bedrock is now quicksand. We have entered an era of arbitrary, personality-driven policy. The earnings potential of a multi-billion-dollar company can be altered not by market forces, but by a single meeting in a single office in Washington, D.C. The risks come out of balance sheets and into the hallways of power. But please keep your seat, the curtain is just rising on Act 2. While this shakedown of Nvidia and AMD was happening, the administration was simultaneously whispering about something else. Something even more profound. They were floating the idea of the federal government taking a direct equity stake in Intel. Now connect the dots. Think these are two separate news stories? Far from it. This is a strategy. First, you create a crisis for the chip designers. You ban them from their biggest market, China. You put them on their knees, then you offer them a deal they can't refuse. Give us a cut, and we'll let you back in. Now you own them, you've established that you, the government, control their market access. Then you turn to Intel, America's last big domestic chip manufacturer, who's been struggling, losing ground to rivals in Asia, and you say, we'll be your savior, a direct government investment, a golden share. The narrative they sell to the public is, again, national security. We need to make our own chips on our own soil. It sounds great. Who could argue with that? But look at what's really happening. The government is using its power to become a market player. They're picking winners and losers. With a stake in Intel, they are no longer an impartial referee. They are a shareholder with a vested interest. What do you think happens next? You think they won't use their regulatory power to benefit their new investment? There's already talk of using tariffs and other levers to steer companies like Nvidia towards using Intel's manufacturing plants. It's a masterclass in coercion. They take money from Nvidia with their left hand and use their right hand to prop up Nvidia's competitor, Intel. This is the state capitalism model of China and Russia imported right here to the USA. It's a closed loop of power and money, where private enterprise exists only at the pleasure of the political class. The free market is being replaced by a feudal market, where you bend the knee and pledge fealty or you get crushed. So how does this play out on the ground for your portfolio? You have to see the bifurcation. The sector has been cleaved in two. On one side, the designers Nvidia and AMD get their revenue back, but they're now vassals, paying a permanent 15% tribute that crimps their margins forever. On the other side, you have the guys who make the machines that make the chips, Applied Materials, Lam Research. They weren't in the room. They didn't get a deal. Their stocks got annihilated because their path to the Chinese market is now a minefield of opaque rules and political whims. The government just blew up their business model as collateral damage. This is what happens when the market becomes an extension of politics. It becomes unstable, irrational, and fundamentally unfair. And here's the angle that none of the reports I've read will dare to touch. The one that gets lost in all the talk of share prices and revenue forecasts. What do you think this does to the soul of a country? We're telling the world, and ourselves, that our principles are for sale, that national security is negotiable, that the rule of law can be bent for the right price. That's what I call moral rot. It's a message that says, nothing is sacred, everything is a deal. And the ultimate irony? The big long-term winner in all of this is China. Beijing is watching this entire chaotic spectacle. What lesson do you think they're learning? They're learning that America is an unreliable, transactional, and unstable partner. This whole affair is the single greatest advertisement for Chinese technological self-sufficiency that money could never buy. They will now pour every resource they have into building their own semiconductor industry to free themselves from this dependency forever. We just traded a few $1 billion in short-term revenue for our long-term technological leverage. It is one of the stupidest, most short-sighted strategic blunders I have ever witnessed. So, what do you do? How do you navigate a world where the casino is rigged and the dealer is drunk on power? First, you have to accept the new reality. Policy risk is now paramount. You need to be reading the political tea leaves as much as the financial statements. Who's in favor? Who's out? Who is donating to whose campaign? It's ugly, but it's the game now. Second, diversify away from the blast radius. There's been some rotation into healthcare, for instance. Why? Because people get sick and need their meds whether we're in a trade war or not. It's a business grounded in reality, not political fantasy. Look for sectors that are essential but boring, the ones that politicians can't easily turn into a talking point on cable news. Third, and this is the most important thing I can tell you, hedge against the system itself. This isn't about specific stocks anymore. Hedge against volatility, against instability, against the whims of men who believe they are above the law. That might mean options. It might mean holding more cash. It might mean looking at assets that aren't tied to any single government's fiscal sanity. Look, the American dream they sold us was a promise of a level playing field. It was never perfectly true, but we could at least pretend. That pretense is over. The game is officially rigged. My job is to give you the map of the back alleys and the dark corridors where the real game is played, so that you can protect what's yours and maybe, just maybe, find a way to win in spite of it all. Stay awake, question everything they tell you. The truth is out there, but they don't want you to find it. I'll be here next week. We'll decode more of it then.